All right, it looks like we're recording. So welcome everybody that's dialed in. Thanks for joining us on our second of, probably mini Monday morning for us here in the US calls talking about COVID-19's impact on specialty coffee. Last week, if you were here, you know that we kind of had a broad ranging discussion with members of the Boot Coffee team, talking about how this is impacting roasting companies, and all the way through the supply chain, all the way upstream to how it's also impacting folks in farming communities. And kind of coming out of that, I, along with David and Casey and Willem, we chatted and thought it would be nice to have some more focused discussions on particular areas. So I reached out to our speakers today, Jesse from Tipico Coffee, Norbert from Cropster, Andy from Phil's, Valerian from Green Plantation and part of our Boot Coffee team, Tyler from Azahar Coffee in Colombia, David also on our team who also consults independently as Transformation Coffee, helping some companies with their buying strategies. I thought it would be really nice to hear how roasters, and especially kind of in light of the more or less dead retail industry right now, were facing this topic. This is really just a roundtable, less presentational, more conversational is the hope. And it's a sort of a scary time. It's kind of an intense time, I think, for a lot of us. And we want to honor that and acknowledge that we need to be realistic in these discussions. But I also know from talking with folks and seeing what's happening on social media that people are doing some really innovative things and are coming up with some really interesting solutions. So I also kind of want to have that, positivity to this call as well, that there is a path ahead. So I'm really excited about that. I think it goes without saying, probably all of you who are participating in this call, either as observers or speakers, we're all working from home. So if there's dogs barking and children rumbling around, that's just our new reality for these meetings. So thanks for bearing with that. I think it's kind of nice to get a little personal look at people I've known professionally. So with that, I just want to hand it off to our team of speakers here to give a brief introduction about who they are, what their business is, what their role in that business is. Really it's kind of free form on these introductions and we'll get started with the conversation. So thanks everybody. Jesse, you want to take us off? You're just at the top of my screen, so I'm gonna.
Sure, perfect. I'm Jesse Kraus. I own and founder of Tipico Coffee in Buffalo, New York. We are a wholesaler and retailer. As of 2 weeks ago, we were at 2 stores, one just launching on a main drag in Buffalo, and then closed that one down immediately based off of social distancing and some governmental needs. And then, so I have a business partner, Pete Herman, and we run and kind of operate the business on a regular basis. We have about 40 accounts across the city. We're still small, under 1,000 pounds a week. My background is with Intelligentsia Coffee, Gimme Coffee, and Verve Coffee, ranging from barista to roaster to coffee buyer. And now we're doing this. It's been a lot of fun, but it's been really challenging over the past couple of years in general, just trying to grow this business, especially in a kind of a newer platform in Buffalo. Buffalo is still a kind of new up and coming city as far as getting people to kind of buy into the specialty coffee realm. It's a little bit about me.
That's great. Yeah, thanks. I was excited to have you on, Jesse, because I think I often talk with clients and things about this idea of like surprising coffee in surprising places, right? And I love that it seems like in every community now around the country, from the smallest town or to, the cities like Buffalo, not a small town, but there's great coffee popping up, and that's really inspiring. So that perspective will be great.
Very cool.
And Tyler, you want to talk a little bit about yourself and Azahar and?
Yeah, no, thank you, Marcus. And thanks for the introduction, Jesse. I'm currently in Los Angeles, where I was stuck before being able to return to Colombia. But I'm based there, and I've been there for 10 years now. And I live in Bogota, but I started a company that's actually based in Armenia in 2010. And we're actually green coffee exporters that also roast coffee in Colombia and operate a few cafes. We just opened our third cafe in Bogota 3 days before the lockdown in Colombia, and we are navigating the world of selling green coffee to roasters during COVID-19, and also being a roaster in a producing country that's also been very affected by COVID, and a retailer as well.
Great. Yeah, thanks for joining us, Tyler. We really wanted to make sure we had the perspective of somebody roasting in a producing country on this call. And
Cool.
I think, our history, when I founded Question Coffee in Rwanda, we did that panel together, and I always found what you're doing very inspiring. So yeah,
Cool.
thanks for
Thank
being
you.
part. Perfect. And Norbert, do you want to talk a little bit about Cropster and what you all are up to?
Yeah, thank you. Well, thanks for having me on this call. My name is Norbert Niederhauser. I co-founded Cropster about 13 years ago, together with Andreas and Martin, two of my Austrian friends. I'm based in Sacramento, California, and run the Cropster Inc. company here in the US, together with my team here, of course. So I'm the CEO. And well, here from Sacramento, we take care of our customers in North and South America as well as Australia. So it's quite interesting from this perspective to see different waves of this crisis coming in through different countries. So as we sell into origin countries as well as the US, where coffee roasting is of course one of our biggest client base. And then we of course also work with coffee traders. So yeah, that's what I do, and very excited to be part of this talk.
Fantastic. Yeah, thanks, Norbert. I loved seeing how quickly you all were able to kind of respond to the situation with launching your online platform and things that I'm sure you can talk in more detail about as we go on. So thank you.
I would love to. Yeah, thanks. Mm-hmm.
And Andy, why don't you talk to us a little bit?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. I'm Andy Trindle-Mersch, and I am with Phil's Coffee. I'm Director of Coffee Tea as of January and Sustainability at Phil's. We're a little on the bigger side compared to Jesse's company. We have 60 cafes that have now been closed for over 2 weeks. We have some wholesale business and some online business. They've been growing. I'm sure you'll get into some of these questions, but basically, we're in a pretty serious situation with our 60 stores being largely closed for the last over 2 weeks. And right now we've started a partial contactless open of a little more than a handful of stores, just to see if we could try to move a little more coffee. So right now my focus, it was getting more and more into sustainability these days, but it's like right knee deep back in coffee right now, trying to manage our position and think about how to balance oversupply of coffee with a greatly reduced forecast, upstream contracts. So yeah, it's tricky right now.
Great. Yeah, thanks for joining us, Andy. I thought it was really important to have someone's perspective from a company of Phil's scale, and with your kind of, I know that, not only the 60 stores, but some pretty big growth plans as well, right? That certainly have been impacted. Yeah. So yeah, so thank you so much for joining us. That's really, really meaningful. And Valerian, why don't you tell us a little bit about Green Plantation, and you also have the perspective of course, online sales and some of those channels through what you've done with Unleashed Coffee.
Hey guys, good morning. My name is Valerian Hrala. I work with Marcus in Boot Coffee, also is me and do other things. But today I want to talk mostly about the European perspective. I think that can help a little bit with my tiny company, Green Plantation. Green Plantation is a small coffee roaster, wholesaler, and retailer in Slovakia, which is a country which has only 5 million citizens, so it's not a big country. And if you see that picture, on the screen, that's actually our Probat UG22 and Peter, the roaster, smelling his beans. So you can always think of green plantation about that. And you know, it's very tough in Slovakia right now because Slovakia took very strict shelter-in-place measures. But on the other hand, is also very positive that our online sales really boomed. So maybe we can talk about that, how a small roaster like Green Plantation can survive this time. We also started our cafe. Somebody mentioned before that they just started cafe and we closed it down right away. We were open for 3 days.
Oh.
So, but you know, it's a bad times, but we can see also a lot of opportunities. I don't know. So we can talk about that later. With Unleash Coffee, that's my US. I'm based in the United States, by the way, just so you guys know. With Unleash Coffee, it's my kind of like an experimental company in the United States where I teamed up with a Brazilian farmer and we own the company half-half. So it's kind of like a concept we're trying for a few years now. Now that situation is very different. We are very strong on Amazon. We thought, you know, we are strong on Amazon, but obviously Amazon implemented a lot of changes and our sales plummeted. So maybe that's also kind of interesting to compare how a third-party marketplace versus your own marketplace can be positive, because on Green Plantation we have our own marketplace, while with Unleash Coffee we rely mostly on this third-party like Amazon, for example. So.
Cool. Yeah, that gives me a lot of food for thought about how we can discuss with the larger group. And David, do you want to talk a little bit about your work, especially kind of sourcing coffee both throughout your career, but also with some folks you're working with now?
Yeah, definitely. Good morning, everybody. I'm here in Los Angeles, and I do work with Boot Coffee as a consultant, working primarily on a project in Colombia with USAID. And I also work as an independent consultant for a number of different companies, including 49th Parallel, buying coffee for them. And basically my history is in coffee roasting, sourcing coffee, product development, goes back about 19 years in that field. So just a number of different activities, and really this past couple of weeks has been surreal, just looking at the coffee industry from the perspective of coffee producers in Colombia, as well as looking at the impact on roasting companies, and kind of coming to just figuring it out and thinking it through, and the impacts it's having on everybody, but also being really inspired by the community that's popping up, and the innovative thinking that's happening on the part of roasting companies, on exporters, as folks figure out how to work in this very different environment. So been both a challenging time, I think, a scary time for folks, but also an inspiring time of connection and community. So yeah, and we'll keep talking about that during the call.
Yeah, thanks, David. And I noticed Jaime also joined us. I wonder if I might put him on the spot and unmute him, since he's a great roaster in Colombia as well. I would love to get his perspective. Is that all right, Jaime? I've unmuted you.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Marcus. Yeah, I work right now for Boot Coffee. So, oh, sorry.
Oh, did we maybe lose connection? We can
I think
keep
you
it.
had a temporary connection loss, yeah.
Yeah, it looks like it.
Yeah.
Well, we can bring Jaime back in as he comes back. But I think, you know, I'm curious of those of you with the retail presence. Valerian, you said, you know, you had just opened a few days before this hit. Jesse, I know you have an existing cafe, but also one that's that you had just opened. And Andy, of course, with all of your retail, Tyler as well. I'm curious to hear what that process looked like for you as you had to make decisions to sort of close stores or pivot the model to contactless pickup or whatever you're doing, and just how you're managing that side of things. And I think, after that we can get into maybe some of the ways that people are moving online or looking to sell coffee elsewhere. So yeah, Jesse, can you maybe share some comments about how you've managed that with Tipico?
Yeah, so obviously one of the things when you get into retail that you kind of jump into a little bit more head first from just outside of just a roasting realm is you become an employer to quite a few more people, especially if it's a busier cafe. And one of the things that we tried to do, especially when we first started almost 5 years ago, was be as great of an employer as possible. So always meeting with our team and communicating with them and having them lead the discussion, and not just be a bystander of kind of what people are having to deal with. And leading up to the latest cafe release, so we were open 5 days on our new Elmwood store before we had to close down indefinitely here. And we had some trouble getting open. So our staff was already a little bit on edge because we were trying to get them in, get them hours. We did as much training kind of offsite as possible. And then we had a big staff meeting saying like, things are a little bit tricky, but we're figuring it out. And then we had to have another staff meeting just 5 days later to let them know that we were closing indefinitely. And we had to lay off 21 employees. And I'm thankful it's only 21, but I'm also thankful that we had such an amazing team that was communicating prior to kind of the collapse of kind of the general society as we kind of were used to it. And we were able to communicate about it kind of leading up to it. So I think everyone was aware that as the calls for New York State especially, there was non-mandatory requests to do as much social distancing as possible. 2 days later, I think they put a full ban on restaurants doing anything besides takeout. And so we were slightly ahead of the curve, but we also wanted to give everyone as much ability to get unemployment claims in as possible prior to everything just unloading, because obviously we saw that with the national numbers going from 600 or 700,000 to 3.3 million unemployment claims, which is just incredible. And some of my staff are part of it. A lot of them, luckily, in kind of our retail world too, there's a lot of 20-year-olds, and 20-year-olds a lot of times are able to rely on their families still, possibly are in a living situation where it's maybe not as dire that they have a paycheck for a couple weeks. But we found that a lot of people we hire a lot of people that are not just in that kind of realm. They are looking for full-time employment. We had just transitioned at least one of our employees to a more of a full-time operations manager position, and she was crushing it. And she deserved every kind of accolade that we were giving her, every increase we were giving her, and leaning on her a lot. So we went from, everything to zero overnight with her.
And you're not doing any sort of contactless pickup or anything? You just made the decision?
Right now we are doing zero contactless pickup. And one of the biggest challenges, and this is me being vulnerable kind of in the moment here because we haven't really announced it as a company, was our original store is now closed permanently. And the reason was because our lease was up March 31st. And we were having troubles talking renewal options with our landlord. And when we heard nothing back over a certain amount of weeks, and then all of a sudden we're told to shut down and we don't know when we can open up again, there's no way that we're going to be able to negotiate a renewed lease or be able to sign a lease that was with no kind of forgiveness for a few months. With the uncertainty of everything, we had to shut it down. And so we had to have staff meeting after staff meeting to staff announcement that we are now permanently closing one of our operations. And luckily it is a very small operation. It's inside a single neighborhood cafe, off the beaten path, no offsite parking. So it's not a big money builder, but I mean, it received a lot of international and national accolades from the design elements to it just being a big, huge figurehead for the city. So we got a lot of emotional tumult in a matter of 2-3 weeks. And so I've needed to take as much of a break as possible over the last couple of weeks from kind of interpersonnel kind of things.
Right.
And we've been focused mostly on just dealing with my children, but also, really focusing on trying to build a small but good online presence, get people as much coffee as possible. Right now, my business partner and I just started talking about, well, all right, how many months can we go while paying rent and figuring out all this stuff on the new location? And when do we need to start making revenue again? Our landlords there are amazing. We've already focused talking to them on building a kind of long-term relationship so we can make sure there's sustainability, being transparent when we do start making revenue. So we could talk about some deferments that are not just ongoing and without reason, but deferments that are based off of we are actually having still lack of revenue. And maybe when there's this, plan A or plan B that goes into effect, we can actually start paying a certain amount of rent back or all of it. And we will be looking at, over the next probably week or two, looking at some contactless potential deliveries, on-site limited kind of service styles, potentially window style or sidewalk style as the as the weather gets nice, or potentially even remote locations. So we'll see how it goes, but we're just trying to move Bean at this point. And luckily, one of the small cooperative grocery stores in town is going through a lot of our coffee. So.
Perfect. Yeah, I'm going to want to make sure that we keep that idea in mind as we kind of move through the discussion. But maybe Andy, can you talk a little bit about? I mean, I know it's not retail isn't quite your world anymore,
Right.
but I'm sure you're aware of what's happening, and I'm curious. Sure. I think David just put in the chat window too. If retail stores are being able to make agreements with landlords on rent deferrals or other things, and just what that looks like for Phil's.
Yeah, thanks for calling out that it's not my domain here at Phil's at all. And a lot of other folks besides me are doing all of the lifting around the retail upside, but I definitely, of course, know what's happening. We're not that big of a company. So we closed all of our stores optionally on March 17th. We were a little early, but not the earliest on making that decision in the Bay Area to just be a part of trying to contribute to slowing the curve. And then about 10 days, and so let me just say that plummeted our revenue, like well over 85% of our company revenue, just like that, pretty immediately. So while we have wholesale and we have online, our wholesale is very solid, but it's also very selectively done. So we're very restrictive with it. So now that's a little bit hard for us that we made those choices. In our online, we never put a lot into. So plummeted sales, we can get into some of the positives of what we're trying to do to compensate for that with the online and wholesale. We then just made a decision to try contactless stores, which Jesse was saying they haven't tried yet, but essentially it's just mobile only, no cash exchange, no credit card exchange. So it has to be prepaid. You show up at basically a table that's at the front of the store that blocks entrance, and there's hand sanitizer right there, and we kind of do an exchange of whatever you ordered. So we started that last Wednesday with 8 of our stores, just to see if we could possibly make enough revenue with that to keep the stores open, because that gets into your question of rent. And our CFO is definitely out there asking. I have no idea the state of where we're being given breaks or non-breaks, but I know we're asking. I'm certainly going out to coffee suppliers proactively to hope I got everybody before you're getting the announcement now. I think I did, but to ask for extended terms over the next, probably 3 months. We're looking to extend our normal terms, and we're generally very, very good payers. We always pay on time. System glitches are the only things that keep us from being prompt payers. And then we try, so we try to do a good job there. And now we're going to have to ask for some favors. So there's ramifications on our import partners around those decisions as well. Right. But yeah, we're non-essential payments we're holding, So it's pretty tough, and we've moved to, as of today, we have aggressively furloughed a number of home office employees as well as put them on reduced hours. So even my tiny team is impacted. We have one person on furlough and one person on reduced hours, effective today, and that's across the home office. Entire departments are furloughed temporarily right now.
Right. Yeah, I think that's something that lots of companies and US workers are starting to see and feel a little bit. Tyler, can you speak a little bit about what it looks like for retail employees in Colombia?
Yeah, great question, Marcus. Colombia has slightly different labor laws when it comes to temporary, when it comes to hiring people for retail establishments and hourly paid workers in general. It's very hard to do that. So most retail businesses, whether you're restaurants or cafes, have to have full-time employees that are paid monthly wages and also receive benefits. And letting an employee go is it's a pretty extensive process that also requires significant severance pay and a bunch of things like that. So many companies are trying to avoid this in any way possible. Some have been forced to let their employees go in what are probably going to be deemed illegal ways.
Do you have an allowance for like a layoff versus a like termination?
It's unclear. Unfortunately, there's not really a good enough option for that yet. That being said, what a lot of companies are doing now, and that the government has acknowledged that it will most likely allow, is forced collective vacation time. And so every employee gets 15 days of paid vacation in Colombia. Okay. So a lot of companies have already made the decision to that are closed on retail companies that are closed to take joint vacation time together for at least 15 days now. That's probably not going to be enough time to get through this, though, and so they're asking that of a lot of the employees. So in our case, we have 46 full-time employees at the retail level. We have 83 at the whole company, and everyone's on staff right now, and we are just feeling the burn. And so, a lot of companies are kind of dealing with that. In terms of the rent break stuff, the government, the Association for all restaurants and food retail establishments in Colombia requested that the government implement or do something to help deal with rents. And so far, they haven't done anything yet. There's nothing like a rent freeze or reduce rent. But the association asked for rent to be calculated as some sort of with a clear relationship to revenue during this time. But right now that's not happening. A lot of companies are individually negotiating, and people that are in a property that's owned by one landlord, when there's several businesses there, we're kind of negotiating in blocks. We've had different results. We've had people that have waived an entire month for us. In one of our locations, to people that have said, I'm sorry, I can't do anything, to people that have said, I'm still going to charge you the full amount, but I'll give you, some time to pay for it.
Right. No, it's, I think, everybody around the world's trying to figure out how to manage their rent and, keeping in mind, I think that landlords do, of course, have financial commitments, and until it's kind of an entire chain of deferments from mortgages to rents, it's really tough. I would like to shift gears a little bit, because I think, we kind of know how retail's been, really like decimated, right? Even if we're doing contactless pickup and other things, it's going to really impact the traffic in our stores. And, I personally don't think that people are going to stop drinking coffee. I think they're probably drinking more of it. I know I feel like I'm ripping through a pot of coffee almost on my own every day, which is a lot more coffee. But it's happening at home, right? So I'm curious to hear about how folks are maybe pivoting their businesses or, ramping up, and, parts of their businesses, like Andy had mentioned, online hadn't been a focus so much, or, other kind of getting bags of coffee into the hands of consumers. Maybe Norbert can talk a little bit about Cropster's new initiative and just what what you've witnessed, Norbert, as someone who talks to a lot of roasting companies of a lot of different types throughout the day.
Yeah. Well, the experience is very similar to what we just heard here. The volumes dropped, and I think that it goes a little bit in waves. So we see, of course, we have seen China first, and then now we saw Europe pretty quickly after. Now we see the US. So it's kind of goes a little bit through in different countries at a different time. And I would say the first week is always a little bit like the shock week, where it goes from immediately cease operations and let everybody go to kind of try to figure it out or wrap the head around it. The big question is also for us, what's the time frame of this? Is it a month? You probably can deal with it. Is it 2 months? Can still deal with it. Is it 3 months, 4 months, 5 months? What's the long-term impact? We don't know. Will people be more mindful with their spending and not go to coffee shops anymore or less? That's all those really big questions. And
yeah, that's the question I've had, Robert. Even if people are just drinking coffee in their homes, right, and they're used to buying a $15 to $20 3/4 of a pound bag, right? Is that going to shift to people spending, $10 on a bag? And you're kind of a specialty roaster working in that realm, right? How do you adapt your inventory, your model, add efficiencies, whatever it is, to maybe lower your costs to a point where you can be more competitive on a grocery store shelf?
Yeah. I mean, it's apparent that the companies who have set them up with subscription plans or with direct customer sales, it's easier. So they're still roasting, they're still fulfilling. Their subscriptions are maybe a little bit altered. I just read a few interviews from companies who do that. And some of them are increasing their production, actually.
Right.
So there's more demand.
Yeah, I'm amazed talking to and seeing companies like my wife Devorah works for Equator, and looking at their production just over her shoulder on a Skype call with their lead roaster, and seeing the pallets of coffee going to their grocery distributor, and what that means from like a roastery management standpoint when you're filling 12-ounce bags instead of 5-pound bags. Is that's a big shift.
It's huge. And I think that's so we'll see a few things here. It's easy to stock up on coffee, so that's one thing. For most people, not in the like 0.1% of specialty, coffee is definitely drinkable after 2 weeks of having it on the shelf. For some people not, but we of course appreciate the fresh coffee, but it's totally in times like this, it's totally okay if it's like 3, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks, whatever. Right?
I've loved seeing some of these, the companies that you think of as being these, super specialty harbingers of freshness, suddenly really pushing 5-pound bags of coffee out to consumers, and so that's going to very much change that, I think.
Right. But I mean, again, if I can, I always choose the fresher and the better options. But if I'm limited in options, I take what's out there. The reality of not having coffee over having coffee is much more I'm having coffee. So that's
great.
I mean, from our perspective, we're not a retailer. We switched within a day to home office, and everybody's still functional to a really high degree as a company. We can do that as a tech company. But we really thought very hard about our customers. Like, oh my God, first of all, we are not disconnected. We are very much connected. The way our customers feel, the way we feel. The way our customers thrive, the way we thrive. So we are totally interlinked into that supply chain. We're niche market software, and we cannot just start selling our software to someone else, and we don't want to do that either. So and that was really inspiring. 2 weeks ago, two of our team members came forward after actually already talking internally. So first of all, we talked internally, it's like, hey, we should have an online shop for people who don't have an online shop. And then it's like the product managers, designers, and tech guys, they already talked, and it's like, how can we do this? And then they came to us, it's like, we would like to move this forward. I was like, that's a fantastic idea.
Cool.
So it's the employees who deeply care about their company, about their customers. So it's for us, it's not, seeing you all here gives me great pleasure, but it also makes me feel the impact the same way you feel it.
Right. Yeah. Maybe you kind of teed up Valerian a little bit as he was talking about online sales and maybe some of the challenges with Amazon and sales drops versus direct to customer sales. So Valerian, can you kind of jump in and?
Okay. So first of all, I have to say that the fact that we invested so much with Green Plantation into our online store, and because we are kind of introverts, we are nerds, so we preferred it that way. We like to roast and kind of sell online. Now is paying off, because as I'm hearing from you about Equator Coffee, it happened also with Green Plantation that our online sales like doubled. So people at home. In Slovakia, actually, the shelter-in-place is very serious. You cannot have open cafe. Done. No, nothing. So if you had cafe or a non-essential store, which coffee is kind of, non-essential according to Slovakia, you had to close. So all those people who used to buy our coffee in different cafes or farmers markets, they now have to buy it online, which is great for us, because obviously we are selling it with retail margins, not wholesale margins. So that really paid off. For a long time we were like, oh, maybe we should be more between people. That worked out. So we are very happy. We're also very happy that we did it on our own platform. That's a big difference, because we have all these other platforms like Shopify and everything, but we had to learn. We built it actually on WordPress and WooCommerce, just for some people who want to know. And we also use a lot of marketing and remarketing pixels. We use a lot of analytics and collect data about our customers. So we actually know what's happening, and we know who is shopping, and we know how to market to when we have to. And that saves you a lot of money. So with Green Plantation, despite of the fact that we lost all the wholesale customers, we might end up profit-wise pretty okay end of this month, because again, retail and wholesale margins are very different. I don't know, we have to do the numbers, but for now, it's a bit surprised me. Of course, we are a bit worried that people's money runs out, and then they start to make different choices, not buying specialty coffee, but they will decide to buy, let's say, something from the supermarket. I don't know. For now, even today, we had kind of a quiet weekend. I was like, okay, that's it. It's over. Today the orders came in. I was like, okay, Peter will be super happy to work his bottom off. So yeah, because of course we package it also into 250 gram bags. So that's when it comes to Green Plantation. Again, we are a small company. We do like 250,000 to 300,000 a year. So that's, in coffee world, that's not too much. With Unleash Coffee, which is my company in the United States, again, started together with a coffee farmer. We did both. We are both nerds. He's also an IT guy. He has a farm in Brazil. And we started the online store 3 years ago. But then, of course, Amazon is the king. So we decided to go towards Amazon. And I think, personally, that's my opinion, that we did a big mistake, because we shot ourselves to our leg, simply because all our customers, or most of our customers, are Prime members, and they prefer to buy stuff through Amazon. So what happened, we lost control over these customers. We don't have their emails. We cannot really pixel them and, remarket or do anything with that audience. And margins on Amazon are super low. So that we really shot ourselves into our legs, because we lost our website customers to Amazon. But it was moving stuff, so we were keeping doing it. And we tried to get them back to the website, but that was not successful. So we kept doing that, but now we're actually paying for that because Amazon has all these weird, and daily they change. So for example, for a while now, we couldn't restock. Did they change it yesterday? I don't know. So on Amazon, some of our stuff, and we sell green coffee and roasted coffee on Amazon. So some of our stuff is gone. So, and it's not going to be restocked, I don't know until when.
Right.
So there are these two things when it's happening. So that's why I'm very happy. And I think that everybody should consider to really to invest in their online store, which is their own.
No, that's great. Thanks, Valerian. And I think, kind of hearing from how business is changing and moving a little bit, I'd love to hear a little bit about how, as like a buyer, Andy, Jesse, really any of you as a buyer of green coffee, you're starting to shift your strategy a little bit, how you're managing what must feel like you're pretty long on your position right now. So yeah, maybe Andy, Jesse, and I think David, if you could all share some comments about that, that'd be great. And even some advice to our audience.
Sure, I can jump in. Yeah, we're we buy a lot out in futures. So I have, literally millions of pounds of coffee on the books. Fortunately, a lot of it can be rolled and kind of, we're used to going through a lot of coffee each month and container.
Andy, we're kind of losing your audio. Maybe you can hide your video.
Come in the last just few weeks. And we've got multiple containers.
Yeah, Andy, I'm not.
Maybe I'll jump in and go, and I'll come back then.
Okay, yeah, maybe Jesse, you can speak for a few minutes about this.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, luckily, going from Verve, where we had 3 to 5 million in inventory every year, to managing my inventory, which is quite simple. I'm fortunate to have 13 years of origin and importer contacts that I've been able to deal with, and so I stay really, really nimble. I buy based off of kind of previous relationships. Specifically some exporters that I know importers work with. I don't sign too many direct trade contracts these days. We stick to about 3, 4, 5 kind of working relationships. Specifically one in Guatemala with Luis Pedro Zelaya Zamora. And right now we would be receiving samples, looking at that crop and purchasing. I know right now we have the handshake deal of this is what we were looking to purchase. And, I'm not sure when and if those samples are going to come. I know that they're very empathetic to the idea that people aren't looking, especially small scale, to be potentially getting into those contracts. A 40 bag, 50, 60 bag contract won't put me in bankruptcy, but it could potentially lead me down a bad path as far as not having the best product that I want a year down the road right now. But I'm sure they're focusing mostly on making sure that those bigger contracts that they've signed and have deals with are fed first, because that's what's probably going to keep them alive. So I luckily do try to stay as nimble as possible, buy what I need, go to a couple importers and focus, when I need something. Hey, I'm looking for a single origin. I don't really care where it's from. I just want it to be above 86 to 89 quality. I want to be able to market individually. And then from there, I buy single origin to blender qualities that I can kind of work in multiple realms with, launch potentially as a blender component, but also as a single origin component. I find that works really well with our espresso blend specifically. And, my books are relatively clean, which is really great. I do have a little bit of long inventory, but nothing that I can't really figure out how to blend through.
That's great.
So
yeah. Thanks, Jesse. It looks like we maybe have Andy back. Are you there, Andy? Can you? Andy, did we get you back?
You did get me back, yes, but I popped off a couple times. My live folks hear me? No.
No, it's still not great. Sorry.
Sorry, I will try to just dial my radio phone.
Okay.
Shut off completely. Okay.
Yeah, no, thanks everyone. I think, Casey did have a great question, and I also wanted to kind of open it up to Tyler to talk a little bit about, as his business is also coffee export. If he can talk about how buyers can best support producers with their buying decisions right now. And Casey, I think it's kind of as a dovetail question about how the current situation can affect, how new and additional green coffee kind of direct trade relationships are, might develop in this reality. So Tyler, I'll take it away.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think it's a really interesting time in Colombia. Casey talked a little bit about this in Peru on the last call. But right now, I mean, yesterday I was going through requests to local government from different departmental committees that make up the governing body of the National Coffee Growers Federation to deal with picking. And so when the whole country's on a lockdown, getting the harvest picked is becoming a serious concern for producers. And so I think, a lot of people have been asking me this question, and it's sort of, how can we help some of the producers that we've developed relationships with across the past decade? And I think a lot of it is providing as much foresight as possible, taking into account the constraints around one's own position. And I'm trying to speak as, someone who exports coffee to roasters, and then also someone who buys for our own roasting operation in Colombia. And so I think to the extent that we can actually provide really clear visibility early on about our needs, and I think Jesse spoke a little bit about willing to blend some things out. So, if we find ourselves in a situation where we go, okay, I'm going to need less coffee in general, and percentage wise, that may mean less, single origins or micro lots from individual farmers. Maybe there's a way for us to look at, a pricing plan this year that will still allow us to take that coffee from those farmers at a price that works for them and still blend some of it out. But I think that clarity is really the key, because, clarity to importers, clarity to exporters, will allow us to transmit clarity to cooperatives, individual producers, and producers associations.
Yeah, thanks for saying that, Tyler. As I've sat through this and thought about coffee buyers and thought about my, my history having worked for an importer as a trader,
yeah.
Boy, right now is the time to just be almost brutally transparent with your supply chain, your suppliers, whoever they are.
100% agree.
About the reality, so that there aren't these surprises that come up at the last minute.
I think, Marcus, if I can also to complement that, I think something really important that we're going to start to find ourselves faced with is questions around sampling. And so we were able to get some samples out recently, but have now been having some serious holdups. And FedEx and DHL are having issues. Samples are becoming more expensive. And again, I say this in the position not of someone who's just trying to sell green coffee more easily, but also someone who samples the heck out of, every lot of coffee that we buy and decide to move. We sample 4, 5, 6 times at least. But I think we're going to find ourselves in a situation where to actually be able to move coffee on time while it's still fresh and doing well may imply, for the first time, us kind of foregoing a look at samples and foregoing a level of control that we would like to normally have. And, I'm reminded of a question that came up. I think Brianna talked about getting a question about whether or not we can check in on farms with drones the other day. And it made me think, what are we going to see in a drone? And made me think a little bit about what is the essence of these relationships, and these relationship coffees that we've built up. And, supposedly a lot of these partnerships, are built on trust. And this may be a time when we're really going to have to test that trust and see how it works for the first time, just to keep coffee moving. Yeah. So I think that's something big for us to keep in mind.
100%. And it's been, in some ways inspiring, but also a little odd to look at, friends social media feeds, right? And seeing the quality control manager at Sustainable Harvest setting up a dining room cupping set. Seeing the buyer at Allegro Coffee, like cupping all alone in their massive lab. So even if samples are still flowing, those coffees probably aren't going to get as diverse a look from multiple cuppers.
As well, yeah.
Marcus, if I could just say a comment there as well.
Please.
You know, I think what Tyler's referring to, I foresee something happening here where we're going to be questioning the value proposition of certification, cup quality, relationship, that value proposition, you know, it's not always about the 86-point cup. It's many times about, I was just there and I just said hello to those farmers, so I'm willing to go the extra mile to buy that coffee, even though it's not an 87.5.
Yeah.
Well, if you can't travel, if you can't be there, and if you're money strapped, is that value proposition of the relationship actually going to change? And I think it's, you know, I'm very concerned for producer groups on what Tyler just said. You know, this is really going to be a time to test people's trust. I would think, and I would think that the ability to execute and complete on time. You know, a lot of times buyers give us forgiveness because they really want that coffee, and they really want to keep that relationship going and keep that coffee in their lineup. Now, perhaps that equation is going to be a little bit different. Maybe executing is going to be much more important to the relationship. And I'm concerned a little bit about how, like, primary farmer organizations in the Coffee for Peace program in Colombia are going to be able to respond to that.
Right.
Yeah. So that's it's just interesting to think that we're going to be testing our entire value proposition of specialty coffee, I think, in the short term.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, I guess my hopeful side of that is that these relationships are built on enough sort of reality, that it isn't just the occasional visit and shaking a hand every 2 or 3 years that we've kind of seen, but that folks, you know, have gone the extra mile to maybe visit more frequently, to keep a relationship alive by email or WhatsApp or you know, whatever tools they have, and that maybe that relationship will persist and continue to be the driver. But I think it is a valid concern. Thanks, Casey.
For a quick perspective, we are obviously, I have retail frontage that I'm trying to expand as well as wholesale. And no matter what, we're going to have to kind of adapt our business and figure out how we're going to be growing it. And a lot of my focus will be trying to grow from a grocery perspective, because I think we have a few locally owned regional grocers out here that go through a lot of product and have a lot of kind of history as well as integrity in the region. And if my business has to swap to that side of realm where I don't get face-to-face confrontation with my customers, I think my natural inclination would be to focus more on that trusting of the relationships and want even more to have every single coffee in my lineup be a relationship coffee, as opposed to just a good spot that I could find.
Nice.
Because
Yeah.
I can tell a quick story to someone who's walking up asking for a pour over. But if I'm just having to rely on people taking bags off of a shelf, off of a national or regional grocer, then I'm going to really want to have just an extra amount of knowledge of the integrities there. So,
Perfect. Yeah. Thanks, Jesse. I think we're almost at the top of the hour. So what I'd like to ask, and I think starting with David, to just kind of wrap us up a little bit with parting thought, a word of advice. As I kind of look through our list of participants, there's a lot of folks that I recognize here as, clients or students, some folks that I just know from the broader coffee world. So thank you for all being here. So if, as you all kind of just go through and can leave kind of just a parting word about what you're thinking after this conversation today. So David, you want to take us away?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Marcus. Thanks, everybody. Yeah, I think for me, the significant thing, this will definitely be a challenging time for relationships with producer partners, a challenging time for roasters and for everybody. and we just have to work through it. We're going to have to test out new ways of communicating, of trusting each other. Hopefully good relationships become even stronger, better relationships through this process, but it is going to be tough. And again, I've just been really inspired by seeing how everybody, roasting companies, retailers, are finding unique strategies to connect with their customers and their clients, and really look forward to and encourage people to continue to do that, to innovate. Business as usual is just doesn't apply right now, and tapping into the creative side and finding ways to get through this is what I think everybody really needs to do. And I really encourage businesses to do what they need to do for themselves. Andy at Phil is talking about extended terms and realizing if this goes on for a number of months, this is what we need to survive. And putting that out there and asking for that, I really think that's the responsible thing for every business to do. So do what you need to do for yourself to survive, and do what you can to strengthen your relationships.
Thanks, David. And Andy's been chiming into the chat window since her audio connection was a little compromised, but
sorry, I don't know if my
it still sounds like a robot, Andy.
One more thought. I'll type my closing thought for having me.
Marcus,
so,
this is Annalisa.
Yeah, Annalisa, we're trying to wrap up just with our speakers right now. So can I ask you to mute yourself?
Yes, I just texted you a question, that's all.
Okay, thank you. So, I mean, but Andy's comments, I think, were really about like solid business really matters right now. She's talking about how they're running multiple scenarios with their sales to forecast multiple scenarios, looking at numbers every day, consistently looking and balancing usage with each forecast scenario. So I think that's a good takeaway, is just like a really strong business sense for buyers right now is more important than ever. So thank you for those comments, Andy. And then Norbert, if you have any parting thoughts, then I'm going to hand it over to Willem to kind of wrap us up here.
I'm basically with David, but my thought was a little bit further. As we have seen in this talk, great relationship with suppliers is important, great relationship with customers is important. So the supply chain needs to, it's kind of at a test right now. How good do we know our customers? How good do the customers know their suppliers? And on all our levels. So, and as we call for end consumers to purchase directly, or to be a little bit patient with what's on the menu, that goes all the way through basically to production. And using digital tools is I think a good is what we can do right now. So just trying to connect on whatever level is possible. I think it's an opportunity too, and that's what I hope that everybody also has a little bit this sense for. This cannot last forever, and it will not. So we will have some very interesting, I think, also positive changes to our businesses.
It's also a good time to create relations with your customers. I mean, we didn't talk about that, right? Because online sales will not happen if you don't have relation with your customers. So, that we work on that very hard, and we're actually having fun with that because we're getting to know them better. So.
Yeah, 100%. And and Annalisa, who chimed in, she actually had just an interesting observation, is like, what is an industry, what steps are happening? And I don't think much is happening yet, but are there, ways, is this an opportunity to maybe better define what these relationships should look like and how business can operate? So that was great. And here's Willem from his home office.
Yes, I since last week, I traveled back from Ethiopia. Which was the easiest trip back from Ethiopia ever, because it was very quiet, as you can imagine. So what I think we have been discussing this hour, and is obviously the fact that we are trying to possibly come up with ways how to react to what's hitting us currently. So talking about the on the strategic level, I don't think any of us really knows yet how to react to this, with the exception of Norbert, maybe, because Norbert's model is I would say, in the lineup of all these speakers, is probably most prone to the impact of this pandemic. But knowing how to strategically prepare us for the future is really hard, and I think we just need to recognize that. I think in the short term, we of course have we find ways how to deal with this pandemic from a business perspective, but I also think it's as important to look at this at the personal level, because obviously we all have, besides our business activities and our creativity that we try to apply, we all also are facing personal challenges and tension and drama. So I look at this very much also from the perspective, how do I bring my business, or what is left of it, how do I bring this into some sort of harmony where I can personally also still look at the goals that seem to be promising right now. Recognizing the fact that we're living in a very unpredictable environment is of course is an understatement by itself. And I think moving forward for the next week's talks that we will continue with coffeecampus.com is that we want to specifically also invite specialists, those among you and others who have not been able to participate yet, to share specific areas of expertise, and then discussing also how this type of expertise can be applied to the new world of uncertainty. That will be interesting, I think. And I thank you all for participating and getting up early. It's a good start of the week, I think, and I look forward to future discussions.
Yeah, thanks, Willem. And just to really wrap it up, we will be doing these weekly. I think I was already thinking about the next topic as we started this meeting. And as we kind of wrapped up talking about the importance of these relationships and maintaining strong and open lines of communication with your suppliers, I think that would be a nice perspective for next time. So if any of you on here are coffee traders or brokers, please feel free to reach out. I've got some people in mind as well, because that could be a great discussion with some folks kind of in the middle of this value chain, talking about how they're going to manage this. And in the chat, I just put our URL to coffeecampus.com/blog, which is where folks will find the recording of this meeting, as well as the future invitations for this meeting. So keep an eye out there.
Thank you, Marcus.
Yeah, thank you, Willem. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, Marcus.
Thank you.
Ciao.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Marcus.